we talk about net neutrality, we are really talking about the future. As the political linguist and neurolinguist George Lakoff says, we're really talking about internet freedom. And since I come from the era of blogging and initial listservs at a time when the media was corporate media was saying one thing and one thing only, for example, about Iraq, the war in Iraq, the internet was our lifeline to the truth. Is that lifeline in danger? Here to join us now to discuss that with us is Timothy Karr. Tim has been on the program before. He's Senior Director of Strategy at Free Press. That's freepress.net. And Free Press is an organization working to create a world where people have the information and opportunities they need to tell their own stories, fighting to save a free and open internet, curb runaway media consolidation, protect press freedom, and ensure diverse voices. So first of all, Tim, thanks for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Secondly, just reading the description of what Free Press does, you guys have your hands full.
We do. I mean, we've been busy for the 15 years of our existence, but particularly so in the last year as we see an increased number of threats, not just to internet rights and freedoms, but also to press freedoms, another issue that we work on. And we also work on issues related to media consolidation, and we've seen under the Trump administration some efforts to help large media companies become even larger.
Yeah, and perhaps if we get time, we'll get to that. But first of all, any society runs on information. It's the bloodstream of a society. It's what keeps, especially if we claim to be a democracy. And one of my problems, I was pleased to see George Lakoff go after the terminology net neutrality. One of my problems with that term is that the only operative word in it is neutral, which sounds reasonable. And what we're really talking about, as I understand it, is a kind of dystopian regime being imposed on the best source of communication we sometimes have. And of course, the internet's been the source of fake news and all of that. But to me, the fake news problem is only going to get worse when corporations decide what you see and what you don't. So why don't we start here for people who really may not know, and I think that includes a lot of our allies, exactly what net neutrality means. What are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about a pretty simple idea that a lot of people who've gone on the internet are very familiar with. We've become so used to it that we may take it for granted, but it's the idea that when you go online, you get to choose what websites you go to, what services you use, whom you connect and communicate with, and your internet service provider, which are these companies like Comcast, Verizon, and AT&T, cannot make that decision for you. Net neutrality says that they have to get out of your way and simply connect you to the websites and services that you want to go to. Now, since we've entered an era where people no longer use the internet just for a website, connecting to websites or sending email, we're watching videos, we're listening to music, we're doing all sorts of things via this high-speed internet connection. These very large phone and cable companies don't like that. They don't like that they're not getting a piece of that action. So in order for them to take control of the internet, they actually have to break it. They have to break net neutrality and take over our ability to choose where we go. Because for them, there's money in making that decision for us. Rather than going to YouTube to watch videos, Comcast might want us to use its own live streaming service. And without net neutrality protections, there is nothing to stop it from doing that.
So are these companies all going out of business because they can't afford to provide these services, and it's just they're living in poverty and their executives are hitchhiking to work, and that's why they just need a little bit of cash to keep going? Is that what this is about?
No, these are companies that that record gross profits in the order of tens of billions of dollars, and particularly profitable are their high-speed internet services. For every dollar they invest in bringing high-speed internet services to you, they get $4, $4 to $5 back. These are very, very profitable companies who want this is the nature of the marketplace, that once you establish a profit level, that becomes the basement, and you have to keep building, you have to keep showing growth and profits. So for them, the future is in taking over our internet connections, taking over our own media experience.
I believe
so that they can record even higher numbers.
I believe the term for the phenomenon you just described is greed. I believe that's what we call that. Now, one of the things that just makes my blood boil in this entire conversation is when I hear an internet executive, a communications executive say, as one did at one point in this conversation, we own the pipes. We can charge what we want. I mean, this to me infuriates me in so many different ways. One of which is that, hey, well, you know what? We, the American people, invented the internet, and we're letting you use it for free. So let's start there. And secondly, where does that end? I mean, they could say, we own the telephone lines, we'll decide who you can talk to and who you can't. Or if you're a landlord, I own this bedroom you're sleeping in, I'll decide who you can sleep with or you can't. So to me, it is a cut and dried case of frankly greedy SOBs trying to impinge on our liberties to use something we pay for as we see fit. Am I off base?
No, you're not. And in fact, these companies do not own the internet. And the internet is a network of multiple networks that has participation from the public sector, of course, has participation from internet users like you and me, and we all collectively have created this network. And we, by the content we put online, by the decisions we make, its value derives from our collective action on the internet. And these companies think just because they control what's called the last mile, in many cases that connection that comes into your house, that they can use that to be gatekeepers. They can clamp down on that last mile connection and take control of this whole network. And of course, these are, as I've said, very rich companies. They've spent millions and millions of dollars on lobbyists and lawyers and PR firms and members of Congress. And so even if the truth is that the internet is not theirs to own, they can create, at least inside Washington, this notion that it should be, and that the net neutrality rules that have been in place in this culture of openness that has defined the internet is somehow some radical idea that they need to fix in order to save the free market and to fight off all of us radical-minded internet users who just want to continue this experience of control over our ability to connect and communicate.
So the last mile, well, I'd kind of like to see these corporations walk the last mile too. So I guess we're even there. But let's talk about that for a second. We've been seeing lately, this sort of contempt that you intimated, that somehow people are the attitude among the executives, and I think Ajit Pai, who's Trump's appointee to the FCC, and so on. I think this notion that people who are resisting what they want to do are somehow just lefty agitators or fringe people. Let's talk about that for a second. First of all, what would happen if they got their way?
Well, they are going to at least get their way on December 14th when the FCC votes by a 3-2 majority to take away the net neutrality protections that we've put in place. So they are going to get their way, but I would say that's not going to be the final word. But under that scenario, where these rules no longer exist and where the FCC as an agency, no longer has the authority to protect internet users, these companies can do whatever they want. They can block your ability to connect to any website or services that you want. They can slow that so that, for example, if you were using Netflix to stream television shows, they can slow that to a point where it doesn't work and then say, well, wouldn't you rather have AT&T's streaming service or Comcast's streaming service or Verizon's streaming service? They can do all of those things. They can create these sort of paid prioritization levels where certain companies and services exist at a premium tier that you need to pay more for without these rules. I mean, this is the first time we would have the FCC with basically no ability to protect internet users. I mean, it's just some sense of just how radical Ajit Pai is in making this decision and pushing forward this very, very phone and cable company friendly agenda. And so December 14th is going to be a big day, but as I said, it's not going to be the end of this fight. My organization, Free Press, plans to sue the FCC after it makes this decision. We believe we have a very sound legal case, and we can demonstrate that Ajit Pai hasn't followed the facts on this issue, he hasn't followed the law, and he has completely ignored public opinion. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Recent public polling shows that 73% of Republicans, 80% of Democrats say they support net neutrality protections. This agenda is only one that's being pushed by very narrow special interests that exist inside the Beltway, and who have got Ajit Pai as their champion.
And my sense is that the interests that are being served here are corporate entities that are almost universally and deservedly despised by the American people. I mean, people who offer terrible service, people who overcharge, people who are frustrating to deal with, people who keep you running around in circles in customer service almost infinitely if you try to cancel. Those are the players we're talking about, right?
Well, the Consumerist, which is a website that's affiliated with Consumer Affairs, does a national poll of the most despised company in America, and on a number of years, Comcast has won that poll. There are other consumer polls that show that phone and cable companies are the least liked by people out there, and it's anybody who has had to wait all day for a cable repairman who never shows up might understand why there's a great degree of displeasure with these companies. The same experience for those who've called their customer service lines and have been put on hold for what seems like hours. So they don't have a very good track record in terms of serving their customers, and on the policy front, they have a track record of actually not telling the truth about issues like net neutrality. They are recently saying that they don't need rules and regulations to obey net neutrality. They will abide by the net neutrality rules, even if the FCC isn't the cop on the beat. But if you look at their history of net neutrality violations, you know that is completely bogus as well. Once they have the opportunity to prioritize their own online products and profit from blocking access to other competing services, they will most certainly do that.
And we have also had, I think it's a few years now, but I think we've had at least one instance of a telecommunication company censoring a news video. I should have looked it up before this interview, but I know they can't be trusted with content. I know that a lot of the highly valued media outlets that people enjoy now, whether it's Vice or Huffington Post or Red State for that matter, if you're conservative or what, that a lot of those probably or very well might not have come into existence under these rules, right? Because they wouldn't have the revenue to pay the communication companies to grease the skids, and so they would never have come into being. It's kind of killing, it's not only killing freedom, it's not only causing people to pay more money, but it's killing the kind of creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship and communication that people take for granted, I think.
Well, I mean, that's been the modern folklore of the internet. It's the story about the entrepreneur with an idea who's working out of her garage or working out of a dorm room, or who has an idea, puts it on the internet, and because the idea is so good that it attracts an audience of millions and becomes a successful business. And that is because of the open internet, because these companies couldn't throttle access to a competing idea out there. So yes, I mean, that is a very real concern, and it's one and that's why a lot of entrepreneurs and tech startups are big supporters of net neutrality. But it doesn't end there. It's also, if you're a band that doesn't want to sign with a record label and instead decides to distribute your music via an open internet, that also becomes a problem when these sorts of services can start charging you extra to stream those audio files online, while giving extra weight and extra priority to the recording labels who have their own online services and can pay to have high quality audio files played via their websites.
Yeah, I got to say, taken all together, it sounds like hell to me. Paraphrasing Ronald Reagan, we're from your telecommunications company and we're here to help. So we're going to have to leave it there, but Timothy Karr, Senior Director for Strategy at Free Press, thanks for all your great work in this area. I hope you come back and tell us how that lawsuit is going after they impose their horrid rules. And thanks for all the good work you do. Thanks for coming on the program.
My pleasure.